I'm Michelle Malte for the Los Angeles Times. Summer is upon us, and that means parents, our kids are spending more time at homes that aren't ours and playing, and there are a lot of considerations we need to make. I'm joined today by pediatrician Tanya Altman, parent and gun safety advocate Anne-Marie Crowell, and from the police department here in Los Angeles, Sergeant Barry Montgomery. One of these considerations that we have to make is gun safety. This weekend begins a national campaign called Ask. Dr. Altman, I wanted to ask you, what is it that we need to ask about when it comes to gun safety?
So Ask Day is really to encourage all parents to ask if there is a gun in the house where their child's going to play. You know, we're really hoping to normalize the conversation so that way asking about guns becomes just like you would ask about pool safety or nuts if your child's nut allergic, or car seats. It's very important, and we know that just asking if there's a gun, and then if the family says the answer is yes, asking if that gun is stored locked and unloaded can really make a difference in keeping kids safe.
Now, as a pediatrician, why are you involved? Some may say this is a political issue, is it?
I don't feel it's a political issue at all. I feel it's a child safety issue. And every day in my office, I talk to families about how they can keep their kids safe. And as parents, we're not always with our kids 24/7. So we do need to teach them, but in certain cases, such as with gun safety, teaching kids really isn't enough. You need parents to be responsible and to learn how to properly store guns safely, so that way we don't have accidental injuries, many of which are deadly in such cases.
Well, as you mentioned, deadly circumstances. Anne-Marie Crowell, you know this all too well. Can you tell us about your son?
Sure. He was 12 years old, Brian, and it was on Christmas Eve, December 24th, 1997, as he was at a friend's house playing for the afternoon before our annual open house at our house every year at Christmas Eve. And his friend had recently found that his mom had a gun, and he thought it was empty when he took it out because he wanted to show Brian that he had found a gun. And he emptied the bullets and put them on the nightstand, but he didn't count them. And he started doing click, click, click as Brian was on the phone with my daughter, who had just called him to say, "You better come home because, you know, people are going to start coming. Mom and Dad will be home from work soon." Just as Brian hung up the phone, the third click of that gun went off, and it hit Brian in the neck and went down his chest. And the last words to his friend were, "I can't believe you shot me," as he tried to run home, but he only made it down to the living room where he collapsed on the floor. And the boy called 911, and they got to him within minutes and took him to the hospital. And it was from that moment on, I got the phone call at work that there had been an accident, but I was not told what kind of an accident. We had snow on the ground. He likes to sled. I just figured it's a 12-year-old normal accident that children have. And they told me I should go to the hospital, not knowing what had happened until I got to the hospital where my husband had met me there, and we were told that he had been shot.
Did you know there was a gun in the house at all?
I had no idea there was a gun in that home, and we're talking 16 and a half years ago, and this is just how times have changed. When we were children, I don't think our parents had to think about it. It wasn't, I don't think it was in every home the way it is now. There's just so many homes that have guns, and it's not a case of, oh, get rid of your gun, you shouldn't have a gun. We're not trying to, get rid of the Second Amendment and all that. If you choose to have a gun, I am just pleading with people to be responsible gun owners.
Now, I want to make sure that our viewers know this is an interactive conversation. We invite you to join us. You can tweet us your questions or comments with using the hashtag AskLATimes. We have a few people who have some comments. You can also post it on Facebook or on the story that I wrote. Now, I'm not just your host for the day. I am also a mother and a gun owner, however reluctant through marriage. We have a gun in our house. Sergeant, what are the things that we need to consider to be responsible gun owners and responsible parents?
Good questions. First, thank you for having me. Gun education is the first thing that we want to do in ensuring that we take the first steps towards safety. Everyone needs to know just how dangerous guns are, specifically children and their parents. Gun owners do need to be responsible, and that requires them to ensure that if they do have a gun, it is locked and it is kept in a locked and secured place so that children can get access to it.
And the ammunition should be separate.
Well, once again, that being a choice of the gun owner, that too should be secured. And when we say secured, let's be honest. Our children at times have a way of finding those things, and you know, through our best efforts to keep them secure, they still find them. That's where the education comes in.
And at what age should you start? I mean, I've got a 9-month-old and a 3-year-old. Now, clearly, it's not going to do much for the 9-month-old.
Right.
But the 3-year-old is very active, very mobile, and very curious.
Well, like anything else, when children are able to have conversations about these things, and these things are in our television shows that we watch, they're in our cartoons, the idea of a gun is, you reach a point with a child when they're inquisitive and they're talking about these things and they're seeing these things, they need to know. And this is an ongoing conversation. This isn't a one-time conversation. And I say that because the doctor mentioned an interesting point, and that is that when we secure our own homes, that's not enough. And we need children to know about guns, so when they go to someone else's home and they see that gun, that when they see an unsecured gun, that they notify an adult and they notify someone, and maybe even telling that other child that, hey, that's not a toy, and immediately getting out of those premises and ensuring that an adult is notified. So that education process, I say early and often.
Now, Dr. Altman, you and I were talking, and there's some disagreement about how much children really process, and your focus is more on what?
So I think it is important to educate your kids and to have this ongoing conversation. But the truth is that you know, we hope that our kids listen to everything that we say and they remember it, but they don't. And research shows that especially when it comes to guns, the best way to prevent accidental injury and death is really to educate parents about keeping guns locked and unloaded. So that's why the Ask Day campaign came about. Asking Saves Kids. And I encourage all parents to go to the website Asking Saves Kids and to read about it and to take the pledge. And just simply asking and educating your community can really help protect all the children in the community.
You know, we're getting a lot of comments here. Some of our viewers are saying thank you for normalizing the conversation. And I think that's sort of the point, is that Anne-Marie, you had said we have to take away the stigma of talking about guns.
Absolutely. You know, like the doctor said too, you know, if you're sending your child, you're going to ask about the swimming pool. Is there someone watching my kids? And if we could just make the topic of gun ownership part of the conversation, not in a mean way, but just in a safety, as a safety issue. You know, if you're the gun owner and you could very easily say to someone, you know, we're having your friend, your daughter over, your son over, and I want you to know that we do have guns, but we have them locked up. Or, you know, make that parent feel better without them even having to ask you the question. But either way, we need the conversation to go back and forth easily without being embarrassed to ask the question. No one should make you feel bad about asking that question. And I, you know, like I told you yesterday, when I do speak to people, you know, I end my story by saying, you know, if you're too embarrassed to ask the question, then close your eyes and imagine life without your child.
I know when we spoke, that was what really touched me as a mom. What one person tweets, Rita tweets, why would you not ask the question? That's the better question. we have gotten a few people responding on Facebook saying that, you know, this is overkill, helicopter moms strike again. Do you really think there are no dangers in this world? What about pets? What about peanuts? Now, I want to be clear. Are we saying that this is a greater danger? It doesn't sound as if we're saying this is any greater danger than cars, than anything else.
Accidents happen, you know, but like a gun wasn't made to be a toy. A dog was meant to be a pet and to be played with. And yes, there have been accidents with dogs who suddenly, you know, attack a child. Knives are meant to cook. They're not meant to kill. Yes, they can. But a gun firing is, you know, if you go hunting, you're trying to kill an animal. If you, you know, a gun is a very seriously dangerous piece of equipment, and we should be talking about it.
Now, Sergeant Montgomery, you obviously have a different relationship with the weaponry, you have a healthy respect for it. Do you have a different perspective or an additional bit of context that you might lend on how most of us should approach guns?
Well, the conversation like we're having right now is the most important one in my mind. I firmly agree that gun owners do need to be responsible, but it's just been my experience that if gun owners are doing the right thing and they are trying to lock their guns, children are inquisitive and they're curious, and those guns in the household or anyone else's household that they are unfamiliar with, and they are unfamiliar with the dangers that can come from, you know, improperly operating or handling a gun, then we are destined to continue to repeat these things. Now, I understand that this conversation is not going to end this. However, it is summer months, children are home, and with that time in the home alone and other people's homes, they are more likely to come across a gun. And it's important that they understand that guns are not toys. We have to keep saying this and keep repeating this so that when we do see these things, we do find a responsible adult and let them know that this thing is not secure and it should be. And at this point, I think the education goes across the board with the gun owners and their children.
Now, as I mentioned before, I'm sort of a reluctant gun owner. We have ensured that our gun is properly stowed, and we separate the ammo from the weapon. I wonder if that's enough. Do I need to know more? My husband is the one who is trained on it. I'm not. I would prefer to not even believe it existed. Frankly, it scares me. But does that make me a bit of a danger?
You know, everyone has fears, and I've found that oftentimes fear is a lack of knowledge on how to keep yourself safe from the item or thing that you're scared of. I recommend that you too educate yourself on that weapon and understand that there is a purpose for that weapon. If it is in your household and you've chosen to have it in your household, then there is a purpose that has been identified. However, in the hands of a child, that is not the purpose of that weapon. So we have to do whatever we can in following the steps that we've spoken about here today to ensure that those guns are secured and they stay out of the hands of children. So that I can say is what we need to focus on.
The one thing that I've seen and heard from every corner is the very first thing with guns is you always assume that a gun is loaded. You always treat a weapon as if it is loaded. I want to ask Dr. Altman, we spoke about this before. I've been dying for and dreading for another parent to ask me that one question. You know, I felt like I've had this secret that I need to share. Do I have a responsibility? Should I approach them when their children come to our home? Should I say, by the way, we do have a weapon, it is secured, and we understand if you have concerns?
I think it's always a good idea to be open and honest. When families come to my house, I'll say we have a swimming pool. It's completely surrounded by a gate. You know, the kids will or won't be swimming, who will be watching them, if the child has food allergies, what we will be eating, if they're going to be watching TV, exactly, you know, who will be responsible for making sure it's appropriate. And so I think if you have a gun, it can only help to let those parents know. Now, you might find some that say, you know what, why doesn't your child come to my house to play? And I think that's always something good for parents to know, that if you don't feel comfortable sending your child to somebody's house, you can always invite them over to your house. And I encounter that a lot, where families say, you know what, I would rather have my house be the place where the kids gather, and I would rather be responsible for watching them. And I think that's fine, whatever makes you feel more comfortable. I think the goal here really is to keep children safe no matter where they are.
Well, I want to ask if, Anne Marie, you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share with our viewers before we wrap up.
No, I just, tomorrow being National Ask Day, I'm just hoping people hear what we're saying. Don't take offense to anything we're saying. We're doing it all for the safety of our children. And tomorrow being Ask Day, I would love to have every day of the year be Ask Day.
And Sergeant, I'll give you the last word. Any final thoughts here?
Well, being that it is summer, and I too, being a parent, I encourage everyone to have this discussion. I encourage everyone, if you own guns, to ensure that they are locked and stored in a safe place. And let's continue this conversation. Let's ask, and make sure that we're not scared to talk about these guns, because they're here. And we do need to talk about this and have this discussion. Thanks.
Well, I want to thank you all, Sergeant Montgomery, Anne Marie Crowell, and Dr. Tanya Altman, for joining us, and for you. And let's continue the conversation. You can join us on LATimes.com and at LA Times on Twitter. Thank you so much. I'm Michelle Malte.